Hello, dear friends. I'm Marina from MarsStars.net. Welcome to our beautiful webinar today. And when I say beautiful, I literally mean it because we are going to talk about Venus. Venus, which is the planet of love, the planet of harmony and balance, and the planet which is so interesting because in a couple of days, literally, Venus will turn retrograde. So that's why I receive a lot of questions about Venus in general, Venus in the chart, and that's what we are going to talk about today. If you have some kind of questions related to Venus about the sign position, house position, aspects, or anything you're interested in, you're welcome to ask your question in the comments, and I will be happy to answer those questions. Also, I would like to remind you that from the 5th, the 6th of October, Venus will be retrograde until the 15th of November. So if you would like to prepare for this transit, and also if you would like to get a personal report, you can find the link below this video. So let's talk about Venus in the natal chart. You can ask me your questions about your Venus or the Venus of your loved ones. I will be happy to answer and to guide you. First of all, okay, we already have some questions. Great. Write them in the comments, guys. I promise I will try to answer as many as possible. So first of all, I would like to mention that Venus in the horoscope of a man and a woman has a different influence. Generally, of course, for all of us, Venus is related to relationships and partnerships. But in the horoscope of a woman, Venus also represents her feminine energy, together with the moon, of course. And on the other hand, in the horoscope of a man, Venus represents the type of women this person, this man, will be attracted to. So there is a little difference here in our interpretation. But in both of the cases, the position of Venus can guide us whether this person will have harmonious relationships, and most importantly, what are his needs, his deepest emotional needs when it comes to his love life or connecting with other people. So the first question that we have is about Venus in the 8th house in conjunction with Moon and Mercury. First of all, also it's important in which sign it is actually. So the more information you give me, the more accurately I can interpret that. So if you can write this, please clarify. Venus in 8th house is considered to bring, well, first of all, some serious emotional transformations. Also, here we have to clarify that Venus is not only the planet of love, but also is also related to finances. Okay, so in this case, we're talking about Venus in Taurus. Great. So from one side, it's an interesting and controversial position because Venus in Taurus is very strong. This is one of the signs which Venus is ruling. So if you have your Venus in Taurus or in Libra in your natal chart, it means that essentially your Venus is very strong. This is one of the kinds of strength that you can possibly have in your chart. So it makes Venus strong. But on the other hand, 8th house is not such a beneficial position for Venus as a house because Venus traditionally is associated with the opposite house, 2nd. So in some way, this position of Venus in 8th house, first of all, can bring mutual finances and situations issues, not necessarily negative. Of course, it depends also on the other aspects. But probably the topic about mutual finances will be important for the person. And also we can talk about receiving money or other type of, support from a partner or from other people as well. The conjunction with the moon is very interesting in this case because the moon is also exalted in Taurus. So basically we have a very strong combination with the feminine planets, between the feminine planets. And in terms of material stuff, actually this aspect is very important. The moon is also a very material planet, the most material planet. So generally this person will be, for him, we can suggest that material stuff will be very important. Of course, here it depends whether this is a woman or a man, but in some way also keep in mind, whenever you have planets in 8th house, especially personal planets, the sun, the moon, Venus, we can assume also that the person at some point generates critical situations, not always consciously. Very often this is unconsciously, without the personal will, but in some way, he finds himself in those critical situations or, emotionally challenging situations. So again, it's about personal transformation. It's about connecting and learning to allow the energy to flow, because 8th house also requires from us to allow the energy to flow. Okay, and conjunction between Venus and Mercury, well, that's a specific aspect. It's not a bad aspect, like, something which will bring serious difficulties, but it's not the most harmonious aspect because Venus is the planet related to emotions. Mercury is the planet related to our way of thinking. So we might find ourselves thinking too much about stuff which are completely emotional. It's not always something bad. People may just be more rational when it comes to their personal life, and they may analyze those situations over and over again. And also this aspect, by the way, is very positive when it comes to negotiations. Those people are usually capable of, being kind, polite, capable of understanding each other. So for negotiations, this is a very harmonious aspect. Okay, let's see. Someone says Venus in Sagittarius, but I don't see the other part of the question. We have a question about Venus in Virgo. What specifically would you like to know? If generally you are asking about Venus in Virgo, what we can say is that, first of all, this is called a fall position for Venus, which means, well, not a strong position. Venus is exalted, which means very strong, in the opposite sign, Pisces. And that's why in Virgo, it is in a fall position. Well, the main reason why Venus is in a fall position is, well, what we just talked about, the conjunction between Mercury and Venus. We have a similar situation here. People are trying to approach mentally emotional issues very often with Venus in Virgo. Of course, we need to see the whole chart, but that's the general tendency. Those people are usually very practical, very rational when it comes to their relationships and their emotional connections with others. Okay. Very interesting combination. Venus in Scorpio in 6th house in conjunction with Neptune and Mars. Here, I just want to mention something about the orbises. For the orbises for Venus, what I'm using is 5 degrees. So it means that the other planets should be not more than 5 degrees away from the exact conjunction, except for the Sun and the Moon. In those cases, the orbises are larger. But in this case, when we talk about Venus and Neptune, the orbis I would use is 5 degrees, just to make that clear. I'm not sure which is the case here, but generally to share my opinion. So if you have Venus, Mars, and Neptune in conjunction, I would say that this is a great combination for music. This combination can make the person extremely romantic, extremely sensitive. Also, sometimes those combinations can bring possible illusions and at some point disappointment. Of course, it depends whether we have other supportive aspects or challenging aspects, but generally this combination makes people extremely romantic, extremely sensitive, extremely passionate. Incredible imagination. For art, this is a great combination. For music, this is a great combination. And if the conjunction is in Scorpio, like in this case, it means that Mars is the dominant planet. So in every aspect, whenever you're trying to analyze a certain aspect, you should answer the question, which of those planets is stronger or is the strongest, like in this stellium? Because the strongest planet, and I mean strong in this sign, dominates the conjunction or the aspect, or has a leading role. So in our case, Venus, Mars, Neptune in Scorpio, the strongest planet is Mars, and the weakest planet is Venus. Venus is in a detriment position in Scorpio. So in some way also we can expect that the person can be very active and very impulsive when it comes to relationship issues, when it comes to expressing his emotions. In the horoscope of women, I have noticed that these women are very active. They are not afraid to show their interest to their partner or to the person they like. But when it comes to art and creativity, this is a fantastic aspect. If we talk about health, there might be some possible things to be careful with, like hormonal issues and the levels of the blood sugar. Of course, no diagnosis, just an idea to observe. Okay, let's see another question. Guys, please try to write the details as clearly as possible. And because someone here says equal house system, Placidus house system, I'm using personally the Placidus house system. So my interpretations are related to the Placidus house system. Virgo, Venus in Virgo in third house in conjunction with Mars, squaring the nodes. Interesting combination. Again, we have a conjunction between Venus and Mars. This is a very interesting aspect, actually, because Venus represents women, Mars represents men. And in some way, the topic about relationships is important, usually, especially, if the planets are in an important position. Third house is not one of those, really important houses. But anyway, Venus, Mars can make the person really focused on this area. Also, third house is related to your communication. So usually those people can be very good in negotiating with others. Also, when it comes to communication with siblings, there might be, interesting communication. Sometimes Mars in third house can bring, some kind of confrontations with siblings, and generally, the person might be too impulsive when it comes to his connection and how he's expressing himself. The square between Venus and the nodes, it suggests that the person needs to change his attitude during this life. Of course, this is a long lesson. He needs to change his attitude towards the area of relationships. When a planet squares the nodes, usually it shows an important lesson for the person. Usually this planet is very important in his life, and there are some changes that the person needs to make. during his life. So it's not necessarily something bad, but it means that there is some work that the person needs to work with. Okay, interesting question. Venus in Pisces fall for other people too easily. Venus in Pisces is in a very interesting position, actually. As we said, this is the exalted position, which means the strongest position after the rulership, so after Taurus and Libra. And keep in mind, guys, that whenever the planet is exalted, that's true for every planet, generally it's considered to be very strong, but there is certain quality which is missing. And one of the things which are important for Venus is that this is the planet of choices. This is the planet which, helps you to decide what you truly want. Do you want, ice cream, or do you want cake? Do you like tall men, or do you like intelligent men, for example? And the typical thing about Venus in Pisces is that sometimes people don't know exactly what they want. And also, sometimes they may like more than one person, very, very often. And it's difficult for the person to make choices. Of course, we have to see the whole picture, aspects, house position, but this is the general tendency. The person can be extremely romantic, the person can be very sensitive, very empathic, and also there is a need to help others or to support your partner. That's why very often women with Venus in Pisces, they might be attracted to men who need them. Sometimes they have problems with addictions, or they need to be supported, or they are weak, or they are ill. Not always, but very often it happens because this woman, wants to feel needed, and that's one of the ways to achieve that. But of course, for creative things, this is a great position. For music, for art, for poetry, makes people very, very sensitive. Okay, another case. Venus in second house in Libra in conjunction with Jupiter 1 degree and Saturn 3 degrees and Pluto in conjunction 11 degrees. So as I told you, in this case, I wouldn't consider Pluto being in conjunction with Venus. So in this case, I would say you have a conjunction between Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. In second house, of course, it means that the area of resources is very important for the person. Also, second house shows your skills. Very often people with important planets in second house, with strong planets in second house, they're very skillful with their hands. Now, in this combination, Libra, which are the strong planets? The strongest planet is Venus, because Venus rules this sign. But Saturn is also very strong because Saturn is exalted. Jupiter is, so-so, not a strong but not a weak position, in the middle. So generally we can say that when it comes to love, probably for this person, the social status is very important. Stability is very important. Also, it's really important for him or for her to be respected for his relationship or by his partner. And generally, Venus-Saturn combination can bring long-lasting relationships. This may take more time. Usually those people, they can be happier in their relationship when they get older, or they can have a more stable relationship when they get older. But on the other hand, the relationship can be stable. And of course, here, when it comes to finances, also, this can bring actually strong qualities for earning money, which doesn't mean that, the person will be spending them easily, because here we have both Saturn and Jupiter. So interesting position, but in every case, the material resources are very important. Okay. Venus in Sagittarius in 5th house, conjunction Neptune and sextile Pluto. Most of the people who were born during the 20th century have a sextile between Neptune and Pluto. Almost everyone. So, of course, this is, an aspect which affects society and even generations. But more or less, this is, of course, very positive. And having a personal planet connected with one of those planets, Neptune or Pluto, suggests that people, well, for this person, this aspect, this social aspect, this generational aspect will be important. Again, we can say that this is a great combination when it comes to art, especially in 5th house. Also, the person can be very romantic. Pluto deepens even more the romantic feelings, can make the person really focused on his partner. And on the other hand, Venus in Sagittarius is also interesting. Not one of the strongest positions for Venus, not a really weak position also. And usually those people, they need some level of freedom in their relationship. So having, also a prestigious partner or someone who they will respect is very important for Venus in Sagittarius. And generally, these are people who love entertainment. They just, enjoy life. They know how to have fun. Of course, depends on the whole chart, but generally, that's a very good tendency. Okay. I think I lost. Okay. We have Venus in Capricorn in 4th house. Venus in Capricorn. Well, Venus in Capricorn is not in a bad position, actually. It has 4 points out of 6, according to the classification. So Venus in Capricorn actually is not in a bad position. Venus in Capricorn requires stability. Usually, these are people who can be responsible in relationships, who need also a stable partner, and having emotional stability at home, because Venus is in 4th house, is very important. By the way, for material issues, this is a nice aspect. For properties, or for generally for, having a stable home, feeling emotionally safe and in touch also with the ground, not literally always, but to be close to people, to be surrounded by loved ones, and to feel like those people can really rely on you and you can rely on them. So I think that with this combination, the topic about family history also can be important, and the connection of the person with this family, with his own family. A very interesting question. What happens when Venus is combusted by the Sun? First, to clarify, because people have different opinion. What does it mean to have a combusted, or also called burnt Venus? According to my experience, according to the knowledge I have from other people, Venus is burnt or combusted when it is less than 3 degrees away from the Sun in the natal chart. If you talk about, horary charts, the rules are different in those cases. But in the natal chart, combusted Venus is less than 3 degrees away from the sun. Generally, this is considered to be hurtful or not beneficial for Venus, but it doesn't necessarily, bring something bad. Generally, this makes people really sensitive. And I have noticed that they are taking everything personally. And they can get, hurt or insulted too easily by others. Even sometimes, when things are not about them, they think that, somebody is doing something just to hurt them. So taking things too personally very often when Venus is combusted. And also this position, of course, depends on the sign and which of the planets is stronger, if is Venus in a strong position or not, according to the sign. But generally, this can make the person also gentle, very kind, very polite. Okay. Next question. What about Venus in conjunction with Uranus in Leo, 28 degrees? First of all, I guess that Venus is 28 degrees. Interesting position, because as we have said already, the last 3 degrees of each sign are considered to be critical. And having Venus in the last few degrees means that, something with this planet is not, well, I don't want to say that it's not okay, but there is something specific. For example, I have my Venus on the 28th degree as well. And I can say that, this brings something bad or something terrible, but it makes your Venus more specific. So part of the strength of this Venus is not there. And that's true for every planet, which is in the last 3 degrees. That's one thing. Second thing, Venus in conjunction with Uranus is also very specific. Generally, this is considered to be a challenging aspect. And the need for independence is very important. Usually those people have a more untraditional attitude towards relationships and partnerships. Sometimes this brings breakups and separations. Of course, it depends on the generation. If Uranus is in Leo, then probably it's you're part of the previous generations when, separations were not accepted or were not common like they are nowadays, which can change also the situation. But generally, there is something more untraditional in the area of relationships, can make also the person very impulsive, emotionally expressive also, because Leo is also a very expressive sign. And also I have noticed that people with Venus in Leo, they need a lot of excitement. And together with Uranus, these people really need strong, exciting emotions, something beyond the common situations, or, extraordinary relationship. When you are so in love or, so impressed by your partner, sometimes, actually very often in those cases, these are some ups and downs, because you cannot be constantly in the sky in love with someone. And when the energy gets lower and things get calmer, sometimes those people can lose their interest. But of course, it really depends on the other aspects. And the next question is about Venus squaring Uranus. Well, also not a challenge, also not a harmonious aspect. And again, the need for independence, for freedom is very strong. Here I want to mention something important generally about the horoscopes, about the interpretations, and actually it includes also psychology. Everything in the horoscope describes us, everything. But we are not always in touch with those things. We are not always conscious about those things. And especially when we have controversial indications. For example, from one side you have an aspect between Venus and Saturn, or your Saturn is in 7th house, let's say. So it means that you need stability, you need an ordinary relationship when things are clear and things are stable. And you're in touch with that. But let's say that on the other hand, you also have this square between Venus and Uranus. Very often when people have those, different indications, they recognize one of those polarities. And they are like, blind for the other part. So they don't acknowledge that, for example, they also need an excitement in their relationship. They don't feel connected with the need for freedom. And very often in those cases, we attract people from the outer world who play the role of this unconscious or blind spot. So, for example, let's say this is a woman and she thinks like, or she feels like she needs stable relationships, she wants marriage, she wants to have a home, a reliable person, and constantly she attracts people who are unavailable or who are not ready to commit, or who are not there for her. The reason why this is happening is because this woman or this person is not fully in touch with himself, and he attracts other people who play the roles of those unrecognized models or patterns or qualities. And very often when, for example, a woman has this aspect square between Venus and Uranus, of course, nowadays there are women who love their freedom, who don't want to commit in a serious relationship, who want to have multiple relationships also. There are, of course, those type of women, but there are also, women who don't want to admit that, and they don't recognize this in themselves. And usually it plays like what we already said, they have partners who are unavailable, or it's difficult for them to have this stable relationship. That's why the horoscope is so helpful, because you can see the whole picture and you can get in touch with the different parts of yourself, or of your emotions, of your psychological patterns as well. And of course, by recognizing those challenges or controversial indications, or needs who are completely different, by recognizing them, by finding a way to satisfy both of those needs, actually that's how you can achieve balance. So just wanted to make this clear. But yeah, Venus Uranus generally can bring instability in relationships, or some changes, or of course other situations as well. All right, Venus in 5th house in Taurus trining Mars. Venus in 5th house in Taurus is in a very strong position. As we said, Venus rules Taurus. 5th house is also a nice place for Venus, by the way. So this person can also enjoy life in general. He can be very sensual. He can, enjoy all the pleasures that life can provide. And of course, this is great. Also, the trine with Mars can, make his personal life really exciting. Usually, those people are capable of following their desires, doing the needed things in order to get what they want. Also, in the area of relationships, usually those people can be more active and initiative. So if Venus is in Taurus, then it means that probably Mars is either in Capricorn or in Virgo. If Mars is in Capricorn, it would make the planet also exalted. So that's a very strong combination. Also positive combination for arts. Okay, I see that some people really like those conversations. I'm trying to answer as many as possible. Okay. Interesting case. Venus in Gemini in 10th house in opposition with the Moon and Neptune, which are in 4th house. Venus also makes trine with Pluto, and Neptune makes probably sextile with Pluto. First of all, whenever you have a planet in 10th house, accidentally or according to its house position, the planet becomes strong. And usually the qualities of this planet are visible for others. Usually this is something where you can, materialize things or you can achieve results. Venus in Gemini. Venus in Gemini is in a specific position. Again, this sign is ruled by Mercury, so people can be more mentally oriented when it comes to their relationships. Very often, I have also noticed that sometimes those people might be attracted to more than one person. Not 100%, but very often. And not always, but at certain point. Very, very common case. And here, I think that there is a very strong family model. So again, I will repeat, Venus in 10th house, opposition with Moon and Neptune in 4th house. 4th and 10th house is the axis related to our parents. There are different interpretations. In my opinion, 4th house represents the mother, 10th house represents the father. In some cases, they might be in the opposite way, but generally, this is the axis related to our parents. Neptune is also a planet which is related to, well, blood relationships or relatives or people who are, strongly connected to us. In some way, also a karmic planet. So I think that in this case, there is some kind of family model in the area of relationships. And for example, if there were some kind of affairs in the family, in the parents' family, it's possible that the person might repeat the same scenario, or in some way this is affecting him. Especially Neptune in 4th house, especially in conjunction with the Moon, suggests that there are some family models here. Not necessarily by the parents, also possibly by grandparents. So if this person, if that's you, Jessie, you are mentioning this, if you have relationship issues, if you are not satisfied with your partner, or if you attract partners who are cheating, or in some way, if there are complicated situations, I would highly recommend you to investigate or to try to learn more about the family history. One of the methods I would recommend in this case is family constellations. Everywhere they're doing those type of practices everywhere, and they can show you some models which you are not aware of, and you can unlock or unblock actually some complicated, sometimes even karmic situations, because I think that there might be something behind this here. Also, Venus in 10th house in Gemini can make the person a great diplomat in his work. So negotiations also can be a very strong area for this person. Okay. Cancer Sun, Capricorn Moon. Okay, but actually these are not related to our Venus model, so we won't analyze this, but suggest that you are born on a full moon. Will Venus in the 12th house be along the same lines as Venus in Pisces? Great question, Chrissy. It's not the same. Having the planet in certain sign, let's say Pisces, and having it in this house is not completely the same. The sign position of Venus brings qualities of Venus. So it makes you emotional or not so emotional, sensitive, or you can let go easily of old relationships, or you're stuck with the old memories. These are things which are more defined by the sign position of Venus. It describes your emotionality, it's who you are, your essence. The house position of the planet shows whether those qualities will be materialized easily and whether they will be visible for others, and in which area of your life it's most likely to happen. And when Venus is into, actually every planet in 12th house is more challenged in its visible materialization, which doesn't mean that, for example, those people don't get married or they don't have relationships, because I know so many people with Venus in 12th house, who materialize this area, but in some cases it brings challenges. Of course, depends on the whole chart, but having Venus in 12th house sometimes may bring secret relationships, or also possible idealization. Very often, of course, depends on the sign and depends on the other aspects, but people with Venus in 11th or 12th house, sometimes they have certain vision about what their partner needs to be, and it's very difficult for them to find this person in reality very often. Okay. Sarah says, I love you making those videos. Thank you so much. Yeah, I will keep doing those webinars. Thank you for being here. Conjunction between Venus and Mars in the natal chart. Does it make the person asexual and not needing others? No, no, I wouldn't say so. Of course, it depends on the sign, but actually it can be right the opposite. Venus and Mars in conjunction, let's say in a fire sign or in Scorpio, can make the person very sexual, very passionate. So I wouldn't say asexual. Venus in Aquarius in second house, squaring Pluto. Interesting. So probably Pluto is in Scorpio, so Pluto is strong in this case. I think that, well, this is one of the challenging aspects. Venus squaring Pluto. First of all, it makes the emotional connection really intense. So sometimes, those people might be, well, obsessively connected to their partners. By the way, Aquarius as a sign, this is the sign which is ruled by Uranus. So, generally this brings the need for freedom and changes. But keep in mind that also Aquarius is a fixed sign. And the fixed signs, they make things really stable. And because this is a mental sign, which means, related to our ideas, our minds, I have noticed that people with Venus in Aquarius sometimes may have, like a fixed idea about certain relationship or certain partner. And I think that the square with Pluto in this case can make the fixation even more intense. So those people or this person might be too emotionally involved sometimes. And also letting go is quite difficult when Pluto makes challenging aspects with Venus. And the topic about power and control also is important in those relationships. The person might be attracted to, people who tend to control him, or he might be in the controlling position, depends on other indications in the chart and his personality. And also in this case, we can talk about financial, sometimes dependency, but in one way or another, the financial issues will be important. Sometimes this can be people who are, really passionate about earning money. And if there are other supportive aspects, actually those people are capable of earning big money. Okay, let me see. So some of the chat is moving back and forth, so I'm sorry if I'm missing some of your questions. The next one. Venus and Mercury in Pisces in ninth house. So Venus is very strong in this position and Mercury is not strong. Mercury is both in a detriment and fall position in Pisces because it's a ruler and also it's exalted in Virgo. So Mercury in Pisces is not strong and Venus is exalted, so Venus dominates this conjunction. And it can make the person extremely romantic, especially in ninth house. So this person may have really high ideals, romantic ideals. Also, when it comes to love, his expectations might be, well, idealized in some way. And probably also, I would say this person will enjoy traveling, connecting with other people, talking a lot as well. And I would say for poetry, this would be a great aspect, or for writing in general. Okay. Okay, Veronica asks, Venus retrograde in Aries in 10th house, opposition with Pluto, trine with Jupiter, sextile with Saturn. Okay, quite a complicated position because we have many different influences. So for interpretation, of course, this is a tough case. First of all, Venus retrograde. I think it's a very interesting topic because don't forget that we have Venus retrograde in a couple of days. Again, I would remind you that we are having our webinar. If you are not enrolled, you can check the link below our video. Venus retrograde in the natal chart. Very specific position, which makes the person more turned into himself. Generally, this can bring more challenges in expressing emotions for the person. This might be more difficult, and also falling in love and letting go of old relationship usually is also a challenge. One of the main reasons is because when the planet is retrograde, the speed is very low. Typically, Venus has a speed of, well, more than 1 degree. 1 degree and 20 minutes, I think, was the maximum, or approximately that's the most common speed for Venus. When Venus is retrograde, the speed is much lower. And usually it means that the person can't, take decisions fast related to this area, or he's not so adaptable when it comes to new circumstances or letting go of old things. So this is one of the things to be aware of if you have Venus retrograde. Also, as we said, expressing feelings is not so easy. Connecting with another person is not so easy. And Venus in Aries is also in a detriment position, which can make the person, incapable of controlling his emotions. Of course, in this case, we have an aspect with Saturn, which can stabilize the situation. But in some way the emotions are not so balanced if your Venus is in this position. The same is true also for Scorpio. I'm one of those examples with Venus in Scorpio. I can definitely, confirm that. I just want to mention something else, a little bit, outside of this. What's the strength of Venus? The strength of Venus is in its weakness. So when the strength of Venus, is in its tenderness, in being, fragile, or in some way to be capable of being vulnerable. There is no force, there is no power, no masculine energy here. And Scorpio and Aries are the signs which are ruled by Mars. These are the masculine signs. So having Venus in one of those signs usually suggests that, the emotions might be too strong and it's difficult to control them. There is more masculine energy, which means intense energy. And usually also in those positions, the emotions are on the surface, they are visible. People with strong balanced Venus in their chart, let's say in Libra, in Taurus, without difficult aspects from Pluto or Uranus, so a balanced Venus makes people have balanced emotions. So it means their emotions are not so visible for others. Emotions are something private, something you share only with your loved ones, something which is related to your private world. So it's not necessarily something visible for others. And sometimes those people may even look, well, not so emotional on an outer level from, the observer, from the outside. And having Venus in Aries or in Scorpio actually can bring those emotions more on the surface. So they're not deep within you, they're not only for yourself, and the person can become, too passionate, too expressive. Everyone can see that he may look emotionally unbalanced or over emotional or dramatizing certain situations. Honestly, that's me. In many cases, I have noticed I'm working on that, but also you have to accept yourself. It's just who you are. Of course, it can make you really passionate person, really, emotionally involved in things, but keep in mind, things are not, well, according to what they're supposed to be. So Venus in Aries in 10th house is interesting because it's also retrograde. So from one side, the person has the need, to express those emotions, to make them visible for others, to attract attention, to dramatize sometimes. But the retrogradness may not allow those emotions, to be revealed. So we may have a certain inner tension in this case, in my opinion. Also, the opposition with Pluto can make things extreme, too intense, but again, it's not so easy to express them. We have also the topics about power and control. Sometimes the person might be obsessively in love with something or someone. So also very, very, very passionate position for Venus. And Venus in trine with Jupiter. Of course, this is one of the greatest aspects you can possibly have in your natal chart, because Jupiter is the great benefactor, Venus is the small benefactor, or in other words, the most positive planets in astrology. So generally, this aspect can bring you abundance of relationships or opportunities for partnerships. Also should bring happiness and opportunities. For material stuff, this is also a very nice aspect. So based on that, the person should have many opportunities for a happy relationship. The social status of the person is also important in this combination, I think. Having Jupiter in connection with your Venus generally means that, the person, well, it's important for him whether this his partner is successful and has a high social status or is equal to him or not. The same can be true sometimes for Saturn as well. Okay. Yeah, Venus retrograde happening soon. Alicia asks. Well, of course, very interesting aspect, very transit. Interesting period for inner work, for exploring different things, for many changes in the area of relationships. We're going to talk about it during the other webinar in details. Actually, what should we do? Because this time Venus will be retrograde in really interesting positions. First, it will be retrograde in Scorpio, the sign where we said it's in a very weak position, detriment position. But then it will go back to Libra, the sign where it's the sign of its rulership, so very strong position. And on top of that, Venus retrograde will make opposition with Uranus, which has just entered, not just but a couple of months ago, it entered Taurus, the sign which is ruled by Venus. So I think that those 40 days approximately will be very, very interesting. And you have to find out where exactly Venus will transit in your natal chart. So, for example, if Venus retrograde makes major aspects with your personal planets or conjunctions with some of the cusps of your houses, it means that this transit of Venus will be very important for you. Depending on the type of the aspects, of course, you can find out whether this will be positive, bringing opportunities, or it will require some changes, some adaptation. It really depends on the aspects. So if you are interested in having a personal report, again, that's included with the webinar. You can find the link below this video. Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Let me see. So, what if Venus is in conjunction with your North Node? That's one of the really interesting cases. The North Node shows your lessons, what you need to learn, in which life area you need to focus your attention. Usually it's difficult, usually it takes time, especially the younger we are, the more difficult it is. And having certain planet in conjunction with the North Node means that part of your lesson, part of your task is to develop the qualities of this planet. So when you were born, generally this planet is considered to be weak because you have to work on that. So you don't have completely developed the qualities of this planet. So if you have the North Node in conjunction with Venus, it means that you have to develop those qualities, meaning you have to learn to love. You have to learn to connect emotionally with other people. You have to, for women especially, you have to get in touch with your feminine energy, with your to balance it. It's not easy and it takes time, but it shouldn't discourage you. So Venus in conjunction with your North Node means this is part of your lesson to develop the Venus qualities. And the opposite, if Venus is in conjunction with your South Node, it means that you already have developed those qualities. Usually, those people are providers of love. Love is very important in their life. Relationships are very important in their life, but they shouldn't focus so much on that. For example, in my horoscope, my South Node is in Libra, the sign ruled by Venus. So from a very young age, I felt like, having a partner relationship is so important for me, which, is not the most, or shouldn't be the most important direction for me. So of course we are all learning and it takes time. And the notes are another topic which we can cover because people are so interested in that. So thank you so much, guys, for being part of this webinar. Thank you for all of your questions. I tried to answer as many as possible. It's really hard to, find them one after another because the chat is moving. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry if I wasn't able to answer your question. I promise to make another webinar soon, another Q&A session where we can talk about other stuff as well, not only Venus. Of course, the reason I decided to talk about Venus today is because we are preparing for the upcoming transit. So on the 5th, 6th of October, which is, well, a couple of days from now, Venus will turn retrograde and will be retrograde until the 15th of November. So find out where Venus will be retrograde in your chart in order to get more clarity in which area it can affect you. And I will be really happy if you join us during the webinar. The webinar is this Saturday. Let me see, 10 a.m. Eastern time, 3 p.m. GMT time. It will be recorded. Everyone will get their recording after that if you cannot join us live. And everyone will get also their personal report explaining which house will be transited by Venus and what type of aspects Venus will make with your planets. So thank you again for joining me today. If you have some ideas about topics that you want to be covered, you are also welcome to send them. And until next time, thank you again and have a wonderful day.